The Classica Modern Motorsport Club South returned to action at Brands Hatch on the August 7th-8th weekend. Qualifying saw 23 cars take to a rather slippery track. The one absentee was Steve Dann in his Volkswagen Scirocco, who's trying to fix an alternator problem. As the track slowly dried out, it became obvious that whoever stayed out the longest and preserved their wet weather tyres the best would get the rewards of a good qualifying position. At one stage, Burley had stopped and considered switching over to the slick tyres, but in the end he'd set his fastest time on the grooved wet weather tyres. Chris Bassett put in a special lap to see his Peugeot in second position overall and the fastest TinTop. He had benefited from good tyres and a tow from Burley, but regardless, a fantastic lap to see Chris on the front row of the grid. Next up was Paul Watson in his BMW, which seems to excel in these slippery conditions, and he was followed by Nick Sutton in his Mitsubishi, qualifying 4th place on the grid. Next up was Warren Johnson, an impressive 5th position in his Peugeot TinTop. Andrew McKenzie was alongside him. Behind them was Colin Tester, replacing Gideon September in the Honda Civic, the 7th place on the grid. Alongside him was Dave Charlton in his Class T1 Seat TinTop. The top 10 was then completed by Jeremy Sutton in his Ford Sierra Cosworth and Ronan Bradley in his BMW. Andy Woodstein would be the top Class D Super Saloon in 11th. The top Class C car would be Ken Hunt in 14th. Then the pole in Class TP went to Ian Seal in 18th. And finally, Angelo Massonetto would qualify in 23rd, getting Class T3 pole. Race 1 took place on Saturday afternoon, and the cars were formed up on an ever-drying circuit. However, looking to the forecast, it predicted a light shower within the next few minutes. Let's ride on board with Jeremy Sutton's Ford Sierra Cosworth for the start of Race 1. Unsurprisingly, Rod would take an early lead from the rolling start, but the Bassett Peugeot did hang on to Rod in the opening laps, even having a look down the inside at clearways. But as they both put the power down the main straight, it would be Rod taking the lead clearly, and it stretched his lead to 7 seconds early on. It took until lap number 4 for Bassett to lose his second position, as a queue of more powerful cars were filling his rearview mirror. Mark Diaz prized the door open first in his Subaru. He was followed by Watson and Alex Sidwell in his Holden Commodore V8. And then on lap number 6, a spin would relegate Bassett further, but the opening few laps were truly something special. But it didn't take long for him to close up to the pack, as there was a safety car early on with Angelo Massonetto's Citroen Saxo grounding to a halt at Graham Hill Bend. By the time of the safety car, Sid was up to second position, but there were 2 lapped cars between himself and race leader Burley. Great work as always from the recovery team saw the action resume on lap number 11, just after the rain shower had started to arrive. The slippery track had made everyone a little bit more cautious, and the lap times were increasing by 3 or 4 seconds. But it would be Rod Burley winning overall and in Class A by 1.7 seconds over Alex Sidwell. Third position would be Nick Sutton in his Mitsubishi Lancer. Paul Watson would be 4th and Class B winner, just ahead of Ronan Bradley, both in their BMW E36s. 6th position would be Mark Diaz. He had a penalty which saw him drop down to 6th position overall. Chris Bassett would still win Class T2, Dave Charlton would win T1. Steve Dann had fought back to 11th place overall and 3rd in Class B, and great drives throughout the field. Ken Hunt would take Class C, Jason Stone would take Class D, and Ian Seal would take Class TP. Unfortunately, Angelo Massonetto's DNF would mean no finishers within Class T3. After the first race of the weekend, we spoke to some of the drivers who shared their experience from this tricky first race.
Gideon, the owner, kindly invited me along to drive it on his behalf, and yeah, it was a little bit damp in quali, and it sort of dried out towards the end, so trying to get to grips with the car and just trying to do a good a lap as possible. And then in the race yesterday, we sort of moved forward and then went back a bit because it started, again, it was mixed conditions. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
For the second race on Sunday morning, we were missing Andy Woodstein. Unfortunately, had retired from the first race of the weekend with engine dramas. But apart from that, the rest of the grid were present. Burley would once again lead the pack away as Sidwell looked up the inside in the run to Paddock Hill Bend, which unfortunately ended up losing him a few positions. Watson would jump past him, as well as Bassett. These two were undeterred by the slippery track surface, which had seen a few competitors choose the wet weather tyres, most notably the Sutton brothers and Steve Dann. Meanwhile, Rob Burley had made his escape once again, as the pack behind him jostled for second position. Bradley had upped his pace and he had got past Watson, as Sidwell and Diaz had appeared in 4th and 5th. On lap number 6, the caution flag appeared once again, as Cripps had spun at Paddock Hill Bend. The safety car quickly picked up Burley, who once again saw his advantage shrink to nothing. He now had Ronan Bradley right on his tail, with a good chunk of the race remaining. On the restart, Burley had timed it well, but Ronan Bradley had hung on in these opening corners and actually closed up on the first lap after the restart. Over the preceding laps, the gap would ebb and flow between the two, but eventually it would be Rod Burley, the escort driver, taking the win by 1.1 seconds. Bradley was absolutely delighted with his runner-up spot, taking his fastest ever lap around this circuit, also winning Class B. Alex Sidwell put on a late charge, finishing 3rd place with the fastest lap, and Mark Dieth was 4th position and 3rd in Class A, and slightly disappointed after what was a pretty promising weekend. Paul Watson would finish 5th place with Nick Sutton in 6th. Chris Bassett would be the leading TinTop in 7th, Colin Tester not far behind him in 8th. Martyn Scott would win Class C in 9th position, Dave Charlton winning T1 in 10th. Jason Stone would once again win Class D in his Ford Fiesta. He finished in 15th place overall. Ian Seal would win Class TP, finishing 7th place overall. And Angelo Massonetto got to the flag today in his Citroen Saxo, winning Class T3. Our only retirements from the second race of the day would be Andrew Mackenzie from Class A, Mark Cripps from Class B, and Warren Johnson from Class T2. Some very tricky conditions throughout the weekend, but the drivers had handled that perfectly, and great to see 20 drivers getting to the checker flag in their second race of the weekend. And after race number 2, we spoke to some of the drivers about the adventures they had got on this weekend.
We had a special person doing some spotting for us back in West Kingsdown, and she sent us a text and said, I think it's going to stay dry, the grass is looking okay. So yeah, when the Caterham started sliding around, I thought, oh, have we made the right decision? But the amount of rain wasn't that much, and I thought, 15-minute race, I've got 4-wheel drive after all. So yeah, by the time we got out there, within 2 or 3 laps, the track was virtually dry. And in actual fact, I think we went slightly quicker than we did yesterday. 2 days running, can't believe it. Yesterday I had a 7-second lead, and I could see all the pack behind, and then the safety car came out, and of course that evaporated. And yesterday we had to contend with a bit of rain at the end as well, which made it a bit more difficult. And today, luckily the weather stayed constant, but then it allowed Ronan to get in close, and he put up quite a bit of a challenge. Had a few issues with the car. We had a bit of a vibration and also a small water leak. So it was a bit wounded towards the end, so I was really pleased to see the checkered flag.
No, it's my first race in Brands. I've raced at Mallory and now Brands. It was a bit tricky because I had no practice in here at all. But yeah, no, it worked very well in the end, so I kept nice and safe. That was I was targeting. I went for the wet ones, but I regretted that at the end. But we made it, and the tires, they're still there, they're still in good condition. So yeah, it was good, was fun, much fun, apart from that.
Obviously wasn't sure what the weather was going to do. It was predicted to be raining, but when we arrived in the assembly area, it was obviously starting to dry. Some of the Caterhams that were finishing off their race were sliding off, so people were putting wets on. But with the TinTops, you've not got that wet or slick option, so you just run a treaded tyre, and the tyres we're on work quite well in the wet anyway. So, you know, and I know the circuit well, so I was kind of hoping for it to be wet. But yeah, we went out on the circuit and it was pretty dry straight away. So we were going quite quickly straight away. Now, obviously, the confidence I've got knowing the circuit so well, I was quite quick straight away, and yeah, we got past some of the quicker cars, and then I think their slicks started to switch on. And yeah, we had a bit of a tussle with some of the more powerful stuff, and yeah, really good fun.
And it's not long before we race once again. August the 21st at Silverstone National will be our next round of the season. All 3 series will be racing there with the CMMCS. We will be joining the Brit Car Endurance Trophy category for this Saturday. So if you're in the area, it's definitely worth checking out the day.